I survived a heart surgery that nearly killed me, but nothing cut deeper than my own daughter Rachel's venomous scream in that Asheville hospital room. "How dare you spend our money if you're not dying?" Her words were a knife twisting in my chest, shredding every ounce of love I had left. I'm Dorothy Sullivan, and this is the story of a mother's heart torn apart by betrayal so cruel, it burned hotter than any pain I've ever known. I'm Dorothy Sullivan, but everyone in Asheville calls me Dot. For 30 years, I taught third graders how to read, write, and dream in a small classroom off Haywood Street. My life was in the laughter of those kids. In the cozy brick house my mother left me on Chestnut Lane, a home filled with her old quilts and the smell of cedar. That house was my sanctuary, until Rachel, my only daughter, turned it into a cage. After her messy divorce 3 years ago, I opened my door to her. She had nowhere to go, no money, no plan. "Just for a bit, Mom," she said, her voice soft, her eyes wet. I believed her. I wanted to. But Rachel didn't just move in. She took over. First, it was the mail. She'd rip open my bank statements before I could touch them, saying, "I've got this, Mom. You don't need the stress." Then it was my groceries. She'd come back with kale and kombucha, things I'd never eat, while my favorite peach cobbler mix vanished from the pantry. Soon, she had my bank app on her phone, claiming it was easier for her to handle things. I'd find receipts for $200 dresses, a $500 spa day in Charlotte, charges I never approved. "Oh, those are for you, Mom," Rachel would say, her smile sharp as broken glass. I wasn't just losing my money, I was losing my life, piece by piece. And the worst part? I let her. Because I thought love meant trust. How wrong I was. Rachel's takeover didn't stop at my mail or my groceries. It grew, like a shadow stretching across my life, darker and colder with every step she took into my world. I'm Dorothy Sullivan, Dot to everyone in Asheville, and I thought I knew my daughter. But the Rachel who moved into my Chestnut Lane home wasn't the little girl who once drew hearts on my chalkboard. She was a stranger, her eyes sharp with calculation, her voice dripping with a sweetness that hid poison. She didn't just want a roof over her head, she wanted everything I'd built, everything my mother had left me, down to the last penny in my savings. It started small, subtle, like a crack in a dam you don't notice until the flood comes. Rachel began whispering to our neighbors, planting seeds of doubt about me. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone with Mrs. Jenkins from down the street. "Mom's getting forgetful," she said, her tone syrupy with fake concern. "She wandered off last week, didn't even know her own address." A lie. A bold, brazen lie. I'd missed a turn driving to the grocery store once, flustered by a new traffic light on Patton Avenue. But Rachel twisted it, painted me as a frail old woman who couldn't be trusted. I stood frozen in my own hallway, my hands shaking, not from age but from rage. How dare she rewrite me in their eyes? Then came the money. Oh, Rachel was clever. She didn't just dip into my bank account, she danced through it like it was her personal stage. I found a $1,200 charge for a weekend cruise to the Bahamas, a trip she never mentioned, never invited me on. Another $800 for a leather handbag from some boutique in Raleigh. For work, she claimed, though she hadn't held a job since her divorce. "It's an investment, Mom," she'd say, tossing her hair with that practiced smile. "You want me to look professional, don't you?" I'd nod, swallowing my doubts, because I wanted to believe she was rebuilding her life. But the receipts kept piling up: $300 for a yoga retreat in Napa Valley, $450 for concert tickets in Atlanta, even $2, $500 for a deposit on a condo she was just looking at. My pension, my life's work, drained drop by drop while I sat in my own kitchen, sipping weak coffee she'd bought because it's healthier. The worst wasn't the money, it was the control. Rachel didn't just add her name to my bank account, she started signing my checks. One day, I found a letter from the bank, tucked under a stack of her magazines. addressed to me but already opened. It confirmed Rachel as a co-owner of my account, with full access to my $50,000 savings. For emergencies, she'd told me years ago, her voice so sincere I'd signed the papers without a second thought. Now, she was cashing checks in my name, paying her car loan, her phone bill, her life, while I was left with a balance that shrank faster than my trust in her. "You don't need to worry about the numbers, Mom," she said when I asked, her eyes flicking away. "I'm handling it." She didn't stop there. Rachel started telling my friends I was too tired for visitors. At the Asheville Senior Center, where I used to play bridge every Thursday, my friend Clara pulled me aside. "Rachel said you're not up for cards anymore," she whispered, her brow creased with worry. "She said you're sleeping most days." Sleeping? I was up at dawn, tending my garden, cooking chili from my mother's recipe, living my life until Rachel decided to erase it. She'd told half the town I was fading, fragile, a burden she was selflessly carrying. I wanted to scream, to shake her and demand why. But every time I tried, she'd flash that smile, say, "Mom, you're overthinking it." And I'd shrink back, doubting myself. The final straw came late one night, when I found her laptop open on the kitchen counter. A real estate listing glowed on the screen. My house, my mother's house, listed for $450,000, with Rachel's name as the contact. She hadn't just taken my money. She was planning to sell my home out from under me, to strip away the walls that held my memories, my mother's laughter, my life. My heart pounded, not from the surgery, but from a fury so deep it felt like it could burn the house down. I wasn't just losing control, I was being erased, and Rachel was holding the pen. The hospital room at Mission in Asheville was a tomb of silence, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor tethered to my chest. "I'm Dorothy Sullivan." To those who once knew me, but lying there, stitched together after heart surgery, I felt like a ghost in my own life. Rachel's words from days ago, "How dare you spend our money if you're not dying?" still burned in my ears, a wound deeper than the 6-inch scar across my ribs. I thought that was the worst of it. Her betrayal screamed in that sterile room. But I was wrong. The real pain, the kind that claws at your soul until there's nothing left, was the emptiness that followed. Rachel didn't just take my money or my home. She took everyone I loved, leaving me to drown in a loneliness so heavy it felt like dying. No one came. Not my grandkids, whose giggles once filled my backyard with joy. Not my bridge club friends, who used to crowd my kitchen table with laughter and homemade pies. Not even Helen Brooks, my neighbor of 20 years, who I'd shared coffee with every Sunday on her porch swing. The hospital hallway buzzed with life families carrying balloons, husbands with thermos mugs, kids clutching teddy bears for other patients. But my room? Nothing. Just a plastic water pitcher, half empty, and a crumpled newspaper from 3 days ago. I stared at it, my hands trembling, not from the IV but from the realization that Rachel had succeeded. She'd painted me as a shadow, a burden, a woman too frail to matter, and the world believed her. I checked my phone, hoping for a missed call, a text, anything. There was one message from Rachel, sent at 2 a.m., cold as the hospital air. "Don't expect me to visit. I'm handling your mess. Stay put." Handling my mess? My mess was a heart that nearly gave out, a surgery that cost $8,000 of my own savings, a life I'd fought to keep. I wanted to scream, to hurl the phone across the room, but my body was too weak, my spirit too broken. Instead, I clutched the thin blanket, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them like a prisoner marking days. 32 tiles. 32 reasons I'd failed to see Rachel for what she was, a thief cloaked in my daughter's skin. The day before, I'd overheard a nurse talking to another patient's family. "Mrs. Sullivan's daughter said she's not up for visitors," she whispered, her voice soft with pity. I wanted to shout, "That's a lie!" But my throat was raw, my voice stolen by anesthesia and despair. Rachel hadn't just lied to the neighbors. She'd lied to the hospital, to the people who saw me at my weakest, ensuring no one would come, no one would care. I thought of my mother's words, etched in my memory. This house, Dot, is your strength. Don't let anyone take it. But Rachel hadn't just taken my house. She'd taken my place in the world. I was invisible, erased in my own story. One morning, I shuffled to the hospital window, gripping the IV pole for support. Outside, Asheville's Blue Ridge Mountains stood steady, their peaks glowing under the dawn. I used to hike those trails, my boots crunching on leaves, my heart full of purpose. Now, I couldn't even get a friend to call me back. I pressed my hand against the cold glass, tears falling, each one a silent scream. "Why, Rachel?" I whispered. "I gave you everything." But the mountains didn't answer, and neither did she. I thought of my grandkids, Lily and Max, who Rachel said were too busy to visit. Too busy? They were 8 and 10, kids who loved my chocolate chip cookies and bedtime stories. Rachel had cut them off too, turning my family into strangers. The final blow came that evening. A volunteer dropped off a get well card from the senior center, signed by Clara and a few others. Scribbled at the bottom in Clara's shaky handwriting was a note. "Rachel says you're not yourself anymore. We're praying for you." Not myself? I was still Dot, the woman who'd taught kids to read, who'd planted roses in her garden, who'd survived a heart attack and a scalpel. But Rachel's lies had spread like wildfire, burning away every connection I had. I sank into the bed, the cards slipping from my hands. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in. The beep of the monitor a mocking reminder that I was alive but alone. Rachel hadn't just stolen my money or my home. She'd stolen my name, my story, my place in the world. And in that moment, I didn't know if I had the strength to take it back. But something deep inside, a flicker of the woman I used to be, refused to let go. The hospital room at Mission in Asheville was no longer just a tomb, it was a battlefield. And I, Dorothy Sullivan, Dot to a town that had forgotten me, was still breathing, still fighting. Rachel's betrayal had buried me in silence, her lies stripping away my friends, my grandkids, my name, her cold text, "Don't expect me to visit. I'm handling your mess," still echoed in my mind, each word a nail in the coffin of the mother I thought I was. But in that sterile room, with the Blue Ridge Mountains watching through the window, something stirred inside me. A spark, a whisper of the woman who'd taught kids to stand tall, who'd planted roses that bloomed through frost. I wasn't done yet. Rachel thought she'd erased me, but she'd forgotten one thing. You can't break a woman who's already survived her own heart stopping. It started with Emma, a nurse with kind eyes and a voice like warm honey. She'd seen me staring at the empty doorway, day after day, waiting for someone who never came. On the 5th morning post-surgery, as she adjusted my IV, she leaned close, her whisper barely audible over the heart monitor's beep. "You're stronger than you think, Dot," she said. "Don't let her make you forget that." I blinked, my throat tight, my chest aching not from the stitches, but from the truth in her words. She slipped a small card onto my tray, plain white with black text. "William Hayes, attorney at law, Elder Legal Services. Just in case," she added, her eyes holding mine, steady, unyielding. That card wasn't just paper. It was a lifeline, a crack in the walls Rachel had built around me. I clutched it, my fingers trembling. Not from weakness, but from a fire I hadn't felt in years. I thought of Rachel's lies, telling neighbors I was lost, spending my $50,000 savings on her cruises and handbags, listing my Chestnut Lane home for $450,000 without my consent. I'd been blind, trusting her because she was my daughter, because I thought love meant letting go. But love doesn't steal. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't lock you out of your own life. I slid the card under my pillow, hiding it from the world, from Rachel, from the part of me that still wanted to believe she'd change. But I knew better now. That card was my first step toward fighting back, toward reclaiming the house my mother left me, the life I'd built with my own hands. That night, alone in the dim glow of the hospital room, I started to see clearly. I pulled out a small notebook from my bag, one I used to jot down lesson plans for my third graders. My hands shook as I wrote, not from fear, but from a rage that had been buried too long. I listed everything. The $1,200 cruise Rachel took, the $800 handbag, the $2,500 condo deposit, all my money, my pension, my years of saving for a retirement I'd never see if she had her way. I wrote down her lies, too, how she told Clara at the senior center I was not myself, how she convinced the hospital I didn't want visitors. And then, in the margins, I scrawled the truth. The deed to my house, still in my name, locked in a fireproof box in my attic. Rachel hadn't taken that. Not yet. I remembered a conversation from weeks before, when I'd asked Rachel about the bank account. "Why's my balance so low?" I'd said, my voice soft, careful, like I was tiptoeing around her temper. She'd laughed, a sharp, brittle sound, and patted my hand like I was a child. "Mom, you're worrying too much. I've got it under control." Control. That word stuck in my throat, bitter as the hospital coffee. She didn't have control, she had theft, dressed up as care. I wrote that down, too, the pen digging into the paper, ink smudging from the force of my grip. Every word was a step out of the fog, a piece of myself I was clawing back. By morning, I'd filled 3 pages, each line a brick in the wall I was building against her. I thought of my mother, her voice echoing through the years. "This house, Dot, is your strength." Rachel thought she could sell it, thought she could erase me. But I wasn't the frail woman she'd sold to the world. I was Dot Sullivan, who'd faced down a heart attack, a surgeon's knife, and a daughter's betrayal. I slipped Emma's card into my bag, next to the notebook, and made a promise to myself. I wasn't going back to that house as Rachel's prisoner. I'd walk through my own front door, head high, and take back what was mine. The fight was just beginning. The spark that Nurse Emma ignited in my hospital room wasn't just hope, it was a wildfire, burning through the fog of despair that had choked me for too long. I'm Dorothy Sullivan, Dot to the Asheville folks who once knew me, and I was done being Rachel's prisoner in my own life. Her venomous words in that hospital bed, "How dare you spend our money if you're not dying," had slashed my heart open, but now they fueled me. Her lies, her theft, her plan to sell my Chestnut Lane home for $450,000, they weren't just betrayals, they were declarations of war, and I was ready to fight. That small card from Emma, with William Hayes's name in stark black print, wasn't just a lifeline, it was my battle plan. I wasn't going back to my mother's house as a shadow. I was going to reclaim it, brick by brick, with my own hands. The day I was discharged, I didn't tell Rachel. She didn't deserve to know. I took a cab from Mission Hospital, my notebook of truths tucked in my bag, and went straight to William Hayes's office on Biltmore Avenue. Bill was older than I expected, his gray hair thinning, his eyes sharp like he'd seen 100 stories like mine. I laid out everything. The $1,200 cruise, the $800 handbag, the $50,000 savings Rachel had drained, the real estate listing for my home she'd posted without my consent. "She's been signing my checks," I said, my voice steady, though my hands shook with rage. "She told the world I'm losing my mind." Bill leaned back, his pen tapping the desk. "Dot, this isn't just manipulation. It's theft, and it's illegal." His words hit like a gavel, solid, final. "Bring me the deed," he said. "We'll lock her out legally." I went home that afternoon, my heart pounding. Not from the surgery, but from purpose. Rachel was out, probably sipping lattes at some overpriced cafe on my dime. I climbed the attic stairs, each step creaking under my weight, and pulled out the fireproof box my mother had given me. Inside was the deed to my house. My name Dorothy Sullivan printed in bold, untouched by Rachel's lies. I made 2 copies at the corner pharmacy, telling the clerk it was for family records. He didn't ask questions. 1 copy went to Helen Brooks, my neighbor, who nodded without a word and slid it into her kitchen drawer. "You're doing the right thing, Dot," she said, her voice soft but firm. The other copy I mailed to Bill, sealed with a note. "She's not getting my home." Next came the locks. I called a locksmith recommended by Bill, a gruff woman named Judy who arrived in a pickup truck with a toolbox bigger than my suitcase. "Changing locks on your own daughter?" she asked, not judging, just confirming. "She stopped being my daughter when she tried to sell my life," I replied. Judy nodded, her wrench already at work. Within an hour, my front door had a new deadbolt, the back door a keypad lock with a code only I knew, 5283, my mother's birthday. Rachel's keys were useless now. I felt a rush, not of fear but of power. My house, my rules. Then I turned to Rachel's things. Her designer boots, her silk scarves, her laptop with that damning real estate listing they didn't belong here anymore. I rented a small storage unit 3 miles away, using $200 from my hidden savings in a coffee can behind the pantry. With Helen's help, we boxed up Rachel's belongings, every item a reminder of her greed. "She won't notice till it's too late," Helen said, taping a box shut. I nodded, my jaw tight. "Good. Let her be surprised." We loaded the boxes into a rented U-Haul, and by dusk, Rachel's things were locked away in a concrete unit, the key mailed to Bill's office. She'd have to go through him to get them back. The final step was the bank. I walked into the Asheville Credit Union, my mother's old bank, and sat down with a manager named Carla. "I want Rachel Foster off my account," I said, sliding my ID across the desk. Carla's eyes widened as she pulled up the records. "She's been withdrawing thousands, Dot. Did you authorize this?" I shook my head, my voice cold. "Not a cent." Within minutes, the joint account was frozen, Rachel's access cut off like a severed lifeline. I opened a new account, one she'd never touch, and redirected my pension checks. Every step felt like shedding a weight, like breaking chains I hadn't known were there. As I walked out of the bank, the Blue Ridge Mountains loomed in the distance, steady, unyielding. I wasn't the frail woman Rachel had sold to the world. I was Dot Sullivan, and I was taking back my life. Rachel didn't know it yet, but her empire of lies was about to crumble, and I'd be standing there, watching, when it did. The air in Asheville was thick with the scent of rain. But inside me, Dorothy Sullivan Dot to those who still cared a storm was already raging. I'd locked Rachel out of my life, literally and legally. Her keys were useless, her name erased from my bank account, her belongings stashed in a storage unit 3 miles from Chestnut Lane. Her lies calling me frail, stealing my $50,000 savings, listing my mother's house for $450,000, had built a cage around me, but I'd broken free. With Emma's card, Bill Hayes' guidance, and my own fire, I'd changed the locks, frozen her access, and mailed her things away. Rachel thought she owned me, but she was about to learn. This house, this life, was mine. And tonight, she'd face the consequences of her greed. I stood on Helen Brooks's porch across the street, my hands wrapped around a chipped mug of chamomile tea, watching the dusk settle over my home. Rachel's car screeched around the corner, tires grinding against the pavement, her usual reckless arrival. She stormed up the steps, her designer purse swinging, her confidence as loud as her heels clicking. She jammed her key into the lock, twisted it, and froze. Nothing. No click, no give. She tried again, rattling the handle, her face twisting with confusion, then fury. "What the hell?" she shouted, pounding the door, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Mom, open this door right now!" Duh. I didn't move. I stood still, my heart steady despite the scar across my chest, my eyes locked on her unraveling. She pounded again, harder, the sound echoing through the quiet street. "This is my house!" she screamed, her words a twisted echo of the lie she'd told the world. My house. My mother's house, with its cedar walls and rose garden. The place I'd fought to keep. I sipped my tea, letting her rage crash against the unyielding truth of my new deadbolt. Helen stepped out, her gray hair catching the porch light. "Dot, you okay?" she whispered, her hand on my shoulder. "Better than ever," I replied, my voice low but firm. Across the street, Rachel's screams grew frantic, her fists hammering the door like a child throwing a tantrum. "You can't do this to me," she yelled. "I'm the one keeping this place together." Keeping it together? She'd drained my pension for cruises, handbags, a condo deposit. She'd told my friends I was fading, my grandkids I was too sick to see them. She'd tried to sell my home. And now, she was locked out, her empire of lies crumbling under the weight of my silence. Right on cue, a police cruiser rolled up, its lights flashing softly in the twilight. 2 officers stepped out, one holding a manila folder from Bill Hayes. "My proof, my truth." "Ma'am," the taller officer said, his voice calm but unyielding. "You've been removed from this property. This home belongs to Dorothy Sullivan." Rachel's mouth fell open, her eyes wild, darting between the officers and the locked door. "That's my mother's house," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I take care of her. She's confused." The second officer shook his head, holding up the folder. "The deed says otherwise. You're trespassing. You need to leave." Rachel spun toward me, spotting me on Helen's porch. Her face twisted. That fake concern she'd mastered now a mask of rage. "Mom, you're doing this? After everything I've done for you? Everything? Stealing my money, isolating me, planning to sell my home?" I stepped forward, my mug still warm in my hands, and met her gaze. "You did this to yourself, Rachel," I said, my voice steady, cutting through her lies like a blade. "This house is mine. Always was." Her eyes widened, her mouth working, but no words came. For the first time, she saw me not the frail mother she'd invented, but Dot Sullivan, unbroken, unafraid. The officers stepped closer, one handing her a notice from Bill. "All communication goes through Miss Sullivan's attorney," he said. "If you try to enter again, you'll be arrested." Rachel clutched the paper, her hands shaking, her designer purse slipping to the ground. She looked small, not powerful, not in control, just a woman who'd gambled my life and lost. She didn't leave right away. She stood there staring at the door, at me, at the truth she couldn't twist. Then she turned, climbed into her car, and drove off, the screech of her tires fading into the night. I walked back to my house, my key sliding into the new lock with a satisfying click. But this wasn't the end. Rachel wasn't done fighting, and neither was I. The real battle was coming, and I'd be ready, with Bill's folder and my truth sharper than ever. The Asheville courthouse was a cold gray fortress, its fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm of angry bees. Dorothy Sullivan, to a town that was starting to remember me, sat on a hard wooden bench, my hands folded, my heart steady despite the scar across my chest. Rachel's lies had nearly buried me. Her venomous scream in the hospital, "How dare you spend our money if you're not dying?" Her theft of my $50,000 savings. Her plan to sell my Chestnut Lane home for $450,000. She'd locked me out of my own life, but I'd fought back. With Emma's lifeline, Bill Hayes' legal steal, and my own fire, I'd changed the locks, frozen her access, and faced her down at my door. Now, in this courtroom, I wasn't just fighting for my house. I was fighting for my truth, and Rachel was about to face a reckoning she couldn't twist. Bill Hayes sat beside me, his briefcase open, papers stacked like ammunition. Across the aisle, Rachel sat alone, her designer purse nowhere in sight, her face pale, her eyes darting like a trapped animal's. No boyfriend, No friends, no one to prop up her lies. She'd thought she could outrun me, thought her fake tears and practiced smiles would keep her in control. She was wrong. The judge, a stern woman with glasses perched on her nose, flipped through Bill's documents. The deed to my house. My bank records, proof of Rachel's theft. "Miss Sullivan," she said, her voice cutting through the room. "Your attorney claims financial exploitation. Let's hear it." Bill stood, calm but razor-sharp. "Your Honor, Rachel Foster has siphoned $45,000 from Dorothy Sullivan's savings for personal gain cruises, handbags, a condo deposit without consent. She falsely claimed ownership of Miss Sullivan's home and spread lies about her mental capacity." Rachel shifted, her hands twisting in her lap. "That's not true," she blurted, her voice high, desperate. "I was helping her. She's confused, Your Honor. She can't manage alone." The judge raised an eyebrow, unamused. "Miss Foster, you'll have your turn." Bill slid a small recorder onto the table, its black surface gleaming like a loaded gun. "This is a recording from Miss Sullivan's phone taken weeks ago," he said. He pressed play, and Rachel's voice filled the room, cold and smug. "She won't live long enough to notice the money's gone." The words hit like a thunderclap, echoing off the courtroom walls. Rachel's face drained of color, her mouth falling open. The judge leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Is this your voice, Miss Foster?" Silence. Rachel's gaze darted to the back of the room, searching for someone her boyfriend, maybe the one who'd vanished when Bill subpoenaed his name on the bank transfers. "Mark," she called, her voice cracking. "Mark, you said you'd fix this." But Mark was gone, his phone disconnected, his social media wiped, leaving Rachel to face the truth alone. I didn't flinch. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, my hands steady, my eyes locked on the judge. Bill continued, his voice like steel. "Miss Sullivan is of sound mind, Your Honor. She's a retired teacher who managed her finances flawlessly until Rachel Foster assumed control through deceit." He handed over my notebook, its pages filled with every lie, every theft, every moment Rachel tried to erase me. The judge skimmed it, her expression hardening. "Miss Foster," she said, "you've exploited a vulnerable adult for personal gain. This court orders full restitution of $45,000, immediate removal from all accounts, and a permanent restraining order. You are not to contact Miss Sullivan without legal representation." Rachel slumped, her shoulders shaking, her lies crumbling like ash. She looked at me, her eyes pleading for the mercy she'd never shown. "Mom, please," she whispered, her voice small, broken. I didn't blink. I didn't soften. I'd given her my home, my trust, my heart, and she'd thrown it all away for a cruise and a handbag. Now, she'd get nothing, not my pity, not my forgiveness. The judge's gavel fell, sharp and final, sealing her fate. Rachel was escorted out, her steps unsteady, her world collapsing under the weight of her own greed. I walked out of the courthouse, the Blue Ridge Mountains standing tall in the distance, just like me. The fight wasn't over, not completely. But as I stepped into the sunlight, I knew. My home, my life, was mine again. And I'd make sure it stayed that way. The sun spilled through the open windows of my Chestnut Lane home, warming the cedar floors my mother once walked. I'm Dorothy Sullivan, Dot to those who know me, and for the first time in years, my house felt alive again, not with Rachel's lies or her shadow, but with peace. She was gone, her venomous words, "How dare you spend our money if you're not dying?" silenced by a courtroom gavel and a truth too strong to bend. I'd fought back, with Emma's quiet courage, Bill Hayes's legal steel, and my own heart, scarred but unbroken. Rachel's $45,000 theft, her plan to sell my home, her lies about my fading mind, they were ashes now, scattered by the justice I'd claimed. My home wasn't just walls, it was my strength, my mother's legacy, my life. And I'd taken it back. I sat at my kitchen table, a plate of homemade cornbread steaming, a gift from Helen Brooks, who'd come over with a smile and no questions. "Dot, you're glowing," she said, her voice soft, like the Asheville breeze outside. I laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years. The senior center called, inviting me back for bridge. Clara sent a text, apologizing for believing Rachel's lies. My grandkids, Lily and Max, were coming Sunday, their laughter already echoing in my mind. The mailbox held only my name now, the bills paid with my pension, untouched by Rachel's greed. I planted new roses in the garden, their petals red as the fire that had carried me through. But this victory wasn't just about me. It taught me lessons I wish I'd learned sooner. First, protect your money, check your accounts, guard your savings, never sign what you don't read. Second, trust your gut. If someone's love feels like control, it's not love. Third, seek help. A lawyer like Bill, a friend like Helen, even a stranger like Emma. They can pull you from the dark. And finally, never let your age dim your strength. At 68, I'm not done living, I'm just beginning. This story, my story, is a warning and a promise. If it touched you, if it stirred something in your heart, please like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the Unwanted Revenge. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be fighting their own battle. I was alone once, but I'm not anymore, and neither are you. As I stood in my garden, the Blue Ridge Mountains watching, I knew. This wasn't just a house. It was my freedom, hard won, and I'd never let it go again.